I have never had this kind of challenge before, so I'm going to get started and just hope that this is getting recorded somewhere on one of my platforms. Um, if you're just joining, please throw in the chat that you can see this and let me know who you are. So let's start fresh. Good morning. I'm Dr. Jeff Evenson. I'm a board certified doctor of holistic health. I have my practice located in northern Minnesota in a small town, Finlayson. I practice from my homestead office. I work with clients in person or or virtual over Zoom or a phone call. Okay, so I have clients all over the country. I have clients all over this region, this immediate region, and it is to me, it's a huge privilege to be able to work with people on their health recovery journey. I work with cases I help people through some of the chronic challenges that the medical system just doesn't seem to be able to solve. And I'm always clear with my clients. I don't have overnight solutions, but I do have long lasting solutions because we're working to get to the root cause of what is causing your body to be out of balance. And it takes time to restore that balance naturally, holistically, naturopathy, homeopathy, with herbs, you name it. I do it. It's not medical. Nothing medical I do is I don't do anything medical here at the practice. Thanks for chiming in there, Marie. I appreciate you. Looks good on Facebook in East Central Minnesota. So as you guys know, I've had a 3-week break from the show. I took 3 weeks off because I was on vacation. I went on a big reunion with a bunch of my Navy buddies that I served with over 20 years. We spent a week of golf in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and then half of the week was down in the Green Bay area of Wisconsin. And it's the 32nd year that this group has gotten together. I love these men. They are phenomenal people. It was so awesome to just take a break, go and be in fellowship with these friends. I've known some of these guys for over 35 years. Um, and it's, as you know, it is just fun to go and reconnect with your base of friends and whatnot. So we've got a couple watchers there. I'm trying to be really sensitive to what channels are tuning in. I'm streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, my Substack page, and I think that page I'm gonna start promoting that a little more heavily over the others, and Instagram and whatnot. And the reason for that, I'm going to talk about a topic today that's going to be really against the narrative, very controversial in some circles, and a lot of streaming platforms. It won't surprise me if I get booted off or if I pick up some strikes after today's topic, because we're going to talk about vaccines. And also got a couple things. It's been a heavy week, as you guys know. You know, of course, we had 9/11 anniversary, but more importantly for the week, it was the morning of Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated. He was assassinated because he had a different opinion. He had a different point of view that people on the left did not like to listen to. Folks, there's people out there, and they tend to be on the left and liberal. Yep, I'm going to concede that there may be some extremists on the right too, but typically they don't go around assassinating people. If you look at the list of murders and assassins and assassination attempts and all that kind of stuff, they all have come from the left. And I don't care if I piss you off by saying that. I just don't give a fuck anymore. Okay. The Charlie Kirk assassination really, I think, is going to have a wake up effect. Okay. Now I'm all about free speech, and post your political views, your opinions, all that kind of stuff on your social media platforms. I don't care. If I don't like what you're saying, I might comment or I might just scroll by it. Did you hear that? You can actually scroll past some of the content out there. I'm not going to get on anybody's case for expressing their own opinions. I'm just not going to. And Charlie Kirk was all about initiating conversation. And I believe there's a quote out there floating around that says, once that conversation stops, once that communication stops, that's when violence begins. And so if you're somebody that can't communicate or you feel like you have stopped, please find ways to communicate and refrain from stepping into violence. What the hell is that? I don't get it. And now we're seeing people, folks, and this is my opinion, when you start celebrating the murder and the assassination of an individual, like we've been seeing with Charlie Kirk, you have stepped in, you're shining a light on the true nature of your heart. And it's time to take a step back. If you're celebrating the assassination of somebody, it's time for you to take a step back and do some deep, deep reflection. And I'll invite you to step into prayer. And I don't care what side that comes from. I'm talking about any human being. Left, right, up, down, colored, uncolored. It's a human being. We are human beings. And there's a lot of people out there that have forgotten that aspect of things because there's a lot of rhetoric that has been dehumanizing and brainwashing, in my opinion, those people that are committing these crimes. People are losing their jobs because they have gone out on social media to celebrate. And what blows me away is I've seen a number of like medical people celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And because I'm talking about a natural health, this is my natural health podcast, I'm going to point those cases out. I know there's other examples out there, professors at universities, students, people are losing their jobs left and right because employers don't want that kind of crap associated with their business. If you worked for me and you put something like that on there, I would not ever, there would not be an iota of hesitation to fire your ass. And when medical people are doing this, celebrating a murder, a human life being taken away from us, it brings all kinds of questions in. What if I go into the hospital and I encounter one of these people that doesn't agree with my opinion and I need some life-saving techniques done? Can I trust them to do that? Or are they going to, hesitate on giving me care to help keep me alive? Those are real questions, folks, that we have to ask. Let's see if I can share this. A friend of mine posted this, and I'm gonna read it. Let me bring it up here on the screen, and I think it reflects a lot on where we're at. I resonated with this, and it's a little tribute here to help explain what's going on, because I felt the energy of this. It has been a heavy, heavy week. And the reason here, and this person writes, Anna Kramer, out on X, or or she's reposting it. The reason you feel Charlie's death so deeply is because grief doesn't measure itself by proximity. It measures itself by meaning. You don't have to know him personally to feel the sting of his absence, because when a voice like his goes silent, something in the atmosphere shifts. The reason it feels heavier than so many other tragedies is because your spirit recognizes that this is not just about a man, it is about a battle. Scripture says eternity is written on our hearts, and when someone who carried truth with boldness is suddenly gone, eternity aches within us. It's like our souls know instinctively that the darkness celebrated, and that strikes us at the core. The reason you can't shake it is because psychologically we don't only attach ourselves to people, we attach ourselves to symbols. Charlie became a symbol of conviction in a time of compromise, courage in a time of fear, and when a symbol is struck down, it rattles something primal and eternal inside us. That's why even those who never met him feel it. There is a strange thread pulling at us, and it is not imagined, it is real. We are bound together by shared purpose, by shared longing for truth, by the Spirit of God Himself, weaving us into a fabric that cannot be torn apart. This loss pulled at that fabric, and every one of us felt the tug. So if you've wondered why this hits so hard, it's because your soul knows this is bigger than news. This is bigger than politics. This is about eternity, about truth, and about the weight of a man whose life carried both. And that is the truth. I'm bringing this up because the week was heavy. I worked with several clients that have been feeling the weight of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I felt it. And so I wanted to talk about that. I didn't agree with everything I didn't agree with all of his opinions. But what I loved about him is he he could open a dialogue with anybody. He was willing to talk to anybody. And he would listen, he would let them speak and have their and allow a discussion to happen, folks. That's what's supposed to happen when we disagree with one another. We should be able to have a disagreement and at the end say, well, let's agree to disagree, and then go out and have a cup of coffee or a beer or something. Not let's go home and load up a gun and go shoot somebody. What the hell is that? I'm having a hard time with that. I'm pretty pissed about it. And so it's time. If you I'm of the idea that if I find out, in my day-to-day life, my daily interactions with people, when you're celebrating the murder of somebody, as we've seen, I've talked about it, I don't want to do business with you. I won't go into your shop. It blows me away. No pun intended there. It's hard to grapple with that sometimes. But it's time. I think it's kind of a wake up call to start showing people that there are going to be consequences, not consequences because they have a political opinion or an opinion different than yours, but consequences when you know there's right and wrong, and these people that are celebrating the murder, and again, I don't care who it is, it's a human being, and when that is being celebrated, I'm thinking of that poor young woman that was murdered on the subway in Charlottesville, North Carolina, stabbed 3 times. She didn't even know what the hell was going on. And the people just sat there and watched her die. She slumped over dead. These are heavy, heavy, heavy things, folks. And from a holistic health perspective, that's how I kind of want to look at it. And it's like, there's so much going on in our society that, perhaps contributes to that. And so, how can I help people from a holistic perspective? Well, I want to help people get healthy to the point where they don't need to rely on the medications that the pharmaceuticals are giving us. The mental health drugs, the psychotropics, the SSRIs, those are the big drivers for pushing people into crime. So let's work on that. There's a lot of mental health issues out there. Let's figure out how we can do that. I'm going to talk today about some of the stuff that RFK is doing, and I think that is, in the long run, is going to help our society as he's cracking open the information out there. Some people are like, "Oh, he's not a scientist and all that." No, he's not. He's an attorney, and he's been suing industry for 30 years on this kind of stuff. He's a man that gets in there and asks questions, and there are scientists that he is working with in his department, on his staff, that are helping him make the case. And we're going to talk about some of that here. So, wow, that's heavy. All right, if you're just joining, throw a hi in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from or listening from. And if you have anything to say or add to what I just talked about, let's talk about it. Throw it in the comments and I'll post it up. All right. So let's start with the book Dissolving Illusions. And I've got that book right here, Dissolving Illusions. Okay. Here, let me turn off this blur. Video, virtual background. There we go. So now the book won't be blurred out. Okay, Dissolving Illusions. Disease, Vaccines, and the Forgotten History. Suzanne Humphreys, MD, and Roman Bistriak. This is a must read. If you really want to understand the history of vaccinations, this is the book where you're going to want to start. Okay, this will start pulling you down rabbit holes you didn't know existed. But if you've never read it, it. Hi Diane, appreciate you jumping on. Diane joining from Finlayson, that's awesome. If you've never read it, it's a wrecking ball to the story we've all been spoon-fed since childhood. The story that vaccines are what saved us from deadly diseases. We've all been taught that. But here's the shocking truth. When you dig into the raw data, the graphs, the mortality charts, the declines in death rates all happened before vaccines were introduced. The data is out there. Before, hear this again, the declines in death rates all happened before vaccines were introduced. The heroes weren't syringes, the heroes were sanitation, nutrition, clean water, and better living conditions. So take smallpox. In places like Leicester, England, when vaccination was pushed hardest, outbreaks actually got worse. We're talking about smallpox. Deaths soared. People protested, resisted, and finally the city abandoned mandatory vaccination. They doubled down on sanitation, and smallpox deaths plummeted. Or polio. We're told the polio vaccine saved the world. But here's what the numbers reveal. Polio was already in steep decline before the vaccine rollout. And when cases of paralysis kept showing up after the shot, the definition of polio was quietly changed. The disease didn't vanish, it was relabeled. And that's not science, that's marketing. And that happened, if you remember, over the last 4 years during COVID, when the vaccine, the system actually came out and redefined vaccine. They changed the definition because the original definition didn't fit the current narrative that they were trying to push. What about whooping cough? Deaths were already down over 90%, and this information is taken from the book I showed you. Deaths were already down over 90% before the vaccine was widely used. And how about measles? How many people remember the Brady Bunch TV show where the kids came home from school or were sent home from school because they had the measles? Very calm episode. Nobody was running, "Mom, I'm going to die. The kids are going to die." Nobody did that. It's the same story. Sharp declines long before the needle. Yet today, if you question this narrative, you're branded anti-science. And here's a little known fact. The contamination of vaccines themselves has caused enormous harm. From early smallpox vaccines made with lymph scraped from the infected calves to polio vaccines tainted with SV40, which is a monkey virus linked to cancer, history is littered with examples of cures that carried their own curses. Even conditions like scurvy, which devastated populations, were solved not by a shot, but by the recognition of nutritional deficiencies. The terrain mattered more than the germ, and the body needed real food, real vitamins, and balance. That truth has not changed. And don't forget chickenpox. Generations of kids caught it, got through it, and built lasting immunity. And so now we vaccinate and we're suppressing that natural immunity. I remember having chickenpox, and my family and friends all brought all their kids over. The chickenpox parties. Because it was better to just get it done when you were younger, have the chickenpox when you were a kid, your own immune system would handle it and build natural immunity to it. And so what's interesting is now that we vaccinate and we suppress that natural immunity, watch shingles explode in adults. So we solved one problem, but we created another. It actually has pushed the immune system to go into shingles as an adult. That shit is crazy. So let me be clear. History tells us that vaccines weren't the saviors we've been told they were. Health turned the corner when people cleaned their water, got rid of sewage in the streets, stopped cramming families into filthy, airless housing, and ate actual nutrition instead of starvation diets. And here we are, 2025. Once again, the system tells us to pin our hopes on a needle, to trust their labs, their mandates, their science. But history speaks louder. The real protector of health is the terrain, your body's God-given ability to thrive when you support it. And if we don't learn that lesson, if we keep falling for the same illusion, we'll keep trading freedom for fear and health for dependency. And I did an aside here for the measles and mortality. Let's talk about that for a minute. We've been trained to think of measles as terrifying, as a terrifying, deadly disease, but the numbers tell a different story. Before the vaccine came out in 1963, measles deaths in the U.S. had already dropped by more than 98%. Why? Because of better nutrition, sanitation, vitamin A status, and overall living conditions. Yes, measles can kill, but in developed countries, the risk was incredibly low. By the time the vaccine arrived, the odds of dying from measles in the US were about 1 in 10,000, and even lower if you were well nourished. So, was the vaccine the hero? Or was the terrain already doing the heavy lifting? That's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in public health wants to admit. So, the science today is really getting suppressed, and RFK is bringing light to that. I got a couple examples here. If you think the censorship and manipulation only happened back in the days of smallpox and polio, think again. It's happening right now in real time. Let's talk about the Yale Listen studies. Okay, this wasn't fringe science. This was Yale University, one of the top institutions in the world. They followed groups of people injured by the COVID shots and compared them with long COVID patients. And what they found is devastating. The vaccine injured group had worse health scores across the board: sleep disturbance, chronic pain, fatigue, anxiety, neurological issues. Many of them were still showing spike protein in their system a year, even 2 years later. Think about that. We were told the spike would be gone in days. Instead, it's persisting like a toxic ghost that the body can't get rid of. It has trouble. They also found immune dysregulation, lower CD4 counts, evidence of autoimmunity, reactivated viruses like Epstein-Barr, all in people whose only crime was trusting the system when it said safe and effective. Now, here's where it gets ugly. The researchers tried to publish their results in major medical journals. They were rejected over and over, not because the science wasn't real, but because the findings didn't fit the narrative. One of the authors said flat out, this is censorship, not science. And doesn't that sound familiar? How many doctors in the past were ridiculed, silenced, or stripped of their licenses for daring to challenge the dogma? How many families crying out about vaccine injury today are told they're imagining things, or worse, labeled anti-vaxxers when all they want is the truth? The system told us the vaccine stays in the arm. The spike disappears in days. There's no long-term risk. But now, buried in the data, we see spikes persisting for years, immune systems going haywire, and patients suffering. Patients who have been ignored, gaslighted, or mocked. Friends, that's not science, okay? That's propaganda. Real science follows the evidence wherever it leads. Propaganda buries it. You should be able to ask questions about any of the studies done with any of these vaccines. You should be able to ask questions without being ridiculed or shut down. Because if the science is real, you shouldn't have to worry about the questions. And here's why this matters to you. If they're going to censor places like Yale, they'll censor anyone, which means the only way forward is to take ownership of your own health. That's what I try to teach all of my clients who come working through me. Strengthen your body's resilience. Build your immune system. I believe the government missed a huge opportunity with COVID, and instead of pushing the shots, they should have said, look, we have a nation of fat and unhealthy people. Let's start working with these people to get their systems back into balance naturally. Let's start exercising. Let's start teaching better nutrition. Let's Let's do all the things that we can help bring people back into balance. I think the government missed an opportunity there. Instead, they pushed this bullshit COVID shot, which I never supported ever during all of that. I did what everybody did at the initial, when the world was shut down. I closed for about 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks, I realized so you can at least see what we're actually working with. I actually opened back up, and I was still seeing people on the sly. We had to go underground. Build your immune system, folks. Detox what doesn't belong in there. Don't wait for the system to come save you. And it's not unreasonable to realize that maybe you don't quite know what to do to get started. That's why I have a practice. That's why I'm here to help you. That's why there are countless other holistic and natural health practitioners out there willing to help you, work with you to get your health back into balance. Because history has already told us the truth. Your terrain is your best defense. And right now, with censorship raging louder than ever, that truth is the only compass you can trust. So I had an aside here. Boy, there was an unpublished news broke just this month. News broke about an unpublished study out of Henry Ford Health in Michigan. Okay. And so here's the story. Between 2000 and 2016, their researchers looked at vaccinated versus unvaccinated children in their health system. And RFK, among others, have been calling for that research to be done. Study the vaccinated versus unvaccinated. No studies have been done. This is the first one I've come across. According to testimony presented to Congress, the vaccinated kids had much higher rates of chronic disease. Things like asthma, autoimmune conditions, even neurodevelopmental disorders. In some categories, the unvaccinated kids had 0 cases, while the vaccinated had many. So here's where it gets wild. The study was never published, not because the data wasn't collected, it was, but because according to testimony, the authors were afraid to publish. They were afraid of professional backlash. Imagine that. Scientists too afraid to even submit their own work. At a Senate hearing, attorney Aaron Siri laid it out. Parents deserve to know these results. Meanwhile, Henry Ford Health said the study didn't meet their scientific standards. Critics from Stanford and elsewhere point to flaws like the possibility that vaccinated kids had more doctor visits, which makes diagnosis more likely. That's a fair concern. But here's the problem. Without the data published, without transparency, nobody can really evaluate it. So once again, what do we see? Evidence that could shake the narrative. Silenced, buried, gaslighted. And whether you believe the findings are solid or flawed, the fact remains science cannot function in the dark. If we can't even ask the questions, if researchers fear for their jobs just for publishing inconvenient data, then science has become nothing more than propaganda. Yeah, this is some heavy stuff. It's a heavy episode. If you've just joined, throw in the comments there. Say hi and tell me where you're watching from. It's always fun to see where people are located across the country. All right. Now, I'm going to talk about one that hit me particularly hard during the whole COVID thing. And that is dealing with shedding in the real world reports out there. But we're going to talk about the shedding. So, one of the reasons I want to talk about it is because people who talk about shedding have all been labeled as quacks, anti-science, anti-vaxxers, making shit up and all that kind of stuff. And there's reports out there now where the shedding is a very real thing, and we're going to talk about that. So it's one of the most explosive, I think, and most denied realities of the whole COVID era, the vaccine shedding. So from the very start, people who never took the shot began reporting strange symptoms after being around the freshly vaccinated. And the stories were consistent. Women, and I saw this in my practice, women with abnormal menstrual cycles, even little girls and women long past menopause suddenly bleeding. People developing headaches, rashes, shingles, fatigue, swollen lymph nodes, even tinnitus. Some said they could literally smell a chemical, metallic odor when they got near someone who'd been jabbed. Now, the system told us flat out, that's impossible, you're crazy, conspiracy theory, and yet peer-reviewed studies have begun to say otherwise. In 2023, researchers found unvaccinated children of vaccinated parents developing antibodies to the spike protein without ever having COVID or the shot. Explain that without transmission. You can't. What's the most likely explanation? Exosomes is what they call it. Exosomes are tiny particles our cells use to send signals. After vaccination, those exosomes can carry spike protein, and they're exhaled in the breath, they're secreted in sweat, and yes, even exchanged sexually. So think about what that means. This wasn't just about your body, your choice. If shedding is real and the evidence says it is, then your neighbor's decision can affect you, your children, even your pets. There are reports of cats, dogs, and parrots showing symptoms after their owners were vaccinated. And the tragedy is the most sensitive among us, those already struggling with mold toxicity, autoimmunity, fibromyalgia, they've been hit the hardest. They didn't choose this. They didn't consent to it, and yet they've been mocked, silenced, and left to suffer. I have helped countless people over the last few years deal with the spike proteins and detox their body from the exposure to other people that had been vaccinated. So let me ask you, if Pfizer's own trial documents warned about environmental exposure, if the FDA itself classifies mRNA as gene therapy, where shedding has always been a known risk, why were we told this was impossible? Why were people censored, banned, or laughed at just for asking the question? And here's the bottom line, the system gaslighted us. They said, get vaccinated to protect others. Now we're finding the vaccinated may be the very ones unintentionally harming others. That's not compassion, that's betrayal. And again, it brings us right back to sovereignty. You can't outsource your health to a system that lies, censors, and experiments on you without consent. You have to own it. You have to strengthen your own resilience, drainage, detox, immune health, whole food, stress management. That's where safety is found, not in the illusions, but in the truth. And here's why this segment on shedding has been so impactful. I have a personal example of that. I saw a client. He came in after it was a couple months after he had been injected. I was not aware that he was injected. And so I asked him why he came back. He said, "Well, I've been feeling like crap, and now I've got him on my table. I'm getting ready to muscle test him to help assess what's going on to get to the root cause." And he goes, "After I got jabbed, I started feeling terrible." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, back up. What do you mean after you got jabbed?" Well, he got a booster shot and a flu shot. I don't know if you remember, they were doing a twofer, booster and flu. So this man came in. Had I known before um, he came into my space, I would have kept him outside and quantum nutrition tested him at a distance. Because we had already been learning about shedding, and I had a policy in place that said, I don't want to see you physically for up to 8 weeks if you've been boosted or vaccinated from the COVID. And so he didn't tell me. And the very next morning, I woke up with the worst sore throat I have ever experienced in my life. That lasted for 2 weeks. That went into chronic coughing for about 2 weeks. And then it moved into my lungs. And I picked up pneumonia in both lungs, double pneumonia. And I've always been prone to pneumonia, even as a little kid, for whatever reason. Um, and so sometimes holistic practitioners, when they're not focused on their own health, worried about taking care of others, it takes someone else to step in and ask the questions. And so I happened to be talking to my sister, who is in the medical field, and she goes, "Oh, you should go get," she goes, "You sound really bad on the phone. You should go get x-rayed, check your lungs out." And I'm like, I'm not going to put my body through that. And then she said the very simple words that got through to me. And she said, "Well, then at least go have somebody listen to your lungs." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." So I texted my local wellness center practitioner. She has a practice in Sandstone. And I said, "Hey, can you listen to my lungs?" And I said, "I'm really bad off. It's getting really bad." Um, and so I got in. She got me in right away. She listened, and she's like, "Yep, your sister's right. There's crackling in both your lungs. You have pneumonia." And so I went on antibiotics, which I hate doing. And this thing, all from the spike protein. I did not get the COVID jab. I even had COVID. I'm sure I had COVID before it was called COVID. Um, and the pneumonia, the first course of pneumonia, the antibiotics settled things down. And I thought it was getting better. And then it came back with a fury, and it went up into my ears, ruptured my eardrum. I ended up going through 3 rounds of antibiotics to work on getting my health back, because the spike proteins, I'm convinced, through muscle testing, nutrition response testing, and quantum nutrition testing, we were able to discern that I was dealing with all the aspects of the whole COVID realm: vaccine shedding, spike protein shedding from vaccines, regular spike protein shedding, the fibrin from there. And there's other aspects of the COVID that we can test, and I had it, went through them all, and I was decimated. My health. If you knew me back then and saw me, you knew that this was bad. My business coach, when I just was getting ready to start a business coaching program, she almost didn't take me on, because she looked at me on a Zoom call and she's like, "Dude, you are really sick. I don't think you should start this program." Thankfully, she changed her mind and worked with me to help get my health back too. So it's a huge thing. Okay. So it raises ethical questions about sovereignty, about our own health. And so this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. We've talked about history, we've talked suppressed science, we've talked shedding. So let's ask a question nobody in authority wants to touch. Where is the line of consent? We were told from day one, get vaccinated, not for yourself, but for others. The slogan was drilled into us. Do it for grandma. Do it for the greater good. Talk about wanting to make me throw up. But now we find out the vaccinated may actually be shedding, transmitting spike protein to others who never consented, never rolled up their sleeves to get the shot. And those people are getting sick. Their cycles are disrupted, their immune system's flaring, their pets are even suffering. So tell me this: how is it ethical to demand compliance in the name of protecting others when the very act of compliance may harm others? How is that for the greater good? So, friends, it's not just a scientific debate. This is a moral and spiritual crisis, because at the core of health is sovereignty, the right to decide what goes into your body. And without sovereignty, you don't have informed consent. Without consent, you don't have freedom. And without freedom, health becomes nothing more than state controlled compliance. That is not the way God designed us to live. In fact, Scripture says, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit? From 1 Corinthians 6:19. Your body is not the government's temple. It's not pharma's temple. It's God's temple. And you are the steward. So the question is not pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. The real question is, do you believe in sovereignty? Do you believe your body belongs to you, or to a system that demands blind trust? That's why I stand here every Saturday morning and remind you, consent is sacred, choice is sacred, and your health is too important to hand over to a bureaucracy or a pharmaceutical cartel that has lied, censored, and manipulated at every turn. The ethical question of our time is this: will you live by fear and coercion, or by truth and sovereignty? Because once you give away your sovereignty, getting it back is nearly impossible. Okay? So, along with that, let me change this to something I can read here. You have the CDC and RFK Jr. is exposing the truth. And then he's been a thorn in the side of the CDC for decades. If you don't know this, then you have been not paying attention. Why? Because he's been willing to expose what most politicians and journalists won't touch. He's pulled back the curtain on how the CDC owns vaccine patents, meaning the very agency that regulates vaccines profits from them. Is that a conflict of interest, anyone? He's shown how the CDC has buried safety data, manipulated studies, and dismissed legitimate concerns, whether it's mercury in the shots, the autism connection, or the explosion of the vaccine schedule itself. And whether you agree with all of RFK's conclusions or not, you can't deny it. He's forced the conversation into the light. And that's what people are asking for. He's made people question. He's made people demand transparency. And that's exactly what real leadership looks like: exposing corruption, demanding accountability, and protecting the people from institutions that would rather protect profits. You hate to say it. So, what can we do? Okay. We've walked through the history, we've exposed the suppression, we've talked about shedding. There was another case here. Let me go up to this one. I can't ignore this one. I read this and I was so pissed. All right. One of the big things is, folks, you can get a lot of information out on Substack, and I have a channel in Substack. Go to substack.com. My channel is called Beyond the Indicator Muscle. If you want to really get into how muscle testing works and all that, is where I talk about it. But here's a report out there from Dr. Pierre Corey. Okay, this came out in June. And let me move this screen down so I don't feel like I'm looking up. All right. The article is titled Medical Record Review of the Twins Who Died After Vaccination in a Review of the Literature Proving SIDS is Caused by Vaccines. Okay. SIDS. I remember SIDS was a concern when my children were infants, and we would check on them constantly. This doctor was asked by Children's Health Defense and the parents to review the medical records of twins found dead in their bed 8 days after multiple vaccinations. And the question, related? Yes, says the hidden science. Okay. One of the channels I follow out there on Substack, and I highly recommend subscribing to this guy. He came to light during the whole COVID thing and continues to write anonymously because, again, because he came out during COVID, he didn't want to get shut down because he puts together such well researched articles on medicine that you can't ignore. Okay, and so he talked about this. So I scanned the article, and here's the picture of the children, the twins. Tyson and Dallas Shaw were found dead in their crib at 18 months of age. Okay, and so they're in the post. Evidence from the medical records was contrary to the fear-mongering pharma media hype. Their deaths were not from measles, as was reported in the media at the time. Oh, media, these kids died from measles. They did not. But stemmed from a staggering near criminal cascade of medical incompetence, repeatedly botching the treatment of routine bacterial pneumonias, one of the most basic conditions that hospitals face daily. Okay, so I recommend going to find this article out there. And here, I'm going to post this in the link in the chat. Boom, boom, boom. There. I just posted that out in the chat. Okay. You're going to want to take a deeper look at it. So some of the highlights. So moving from the lie that measles is dangerous or deadly, it is not. Let's now examine the lie that childhood vaccines do not cause SIDS. What you will learn about the lethality of vaccines to infants, those under 1 year old, will shock you as it shocked me. That's the doctor writing this article. The tragic cases of the Idaho twins rip apart the insidious myth that vaccines are safe and effective. Nothing could be further from the truth. And it's utterly maddening that countless parents remain oblivious to the damning evidence, blindly marching their precious infants to pediatricians for so-called well baby checks, well baby visits, a ritual that for some is tantamount to delivering them to an executioner. Too extreme? Read the rest of this post and then you make an informed judgment as to the soundness of that statement. I believe it's right on the mark. I guess this was in Idaho. I said Texas. The literature proving that SIDS, which began in the 60s, is almost entirely caused by vaccination. Okay. Before the heavy vaccinations got rolled out, SIDS was non-existent. Let's start with the end of the record and then go back to the beginning. This doctor writes, Dallas and Tyson died on the night of the 7th day following their 18th month well baby visit, where they received 5 vaccinations during that visit: DTaP, influenza, and Hep A. Now, back to the beginning, they were fraternal twins who were born prematurely at 29 weeks after mom went into labor about a week before. Tyson was in breech position, thus, emergency C section was performed. The kids went straight to the NICU as per protocol for such preterm babies. Dallas had a grade 1 intraventricular hemorrhage without sequelae, and both had respiratory insufficiency, apneas, and desaturations, needing CPAP support and caffeine administration for several weeks. Okay. And they said had some other typical problems of prematurity that you, as you can imagine, they're all listed here in the article. But both got hepatitis B vaccination at 1 month old, far sooner than normal gestational age, just before leaving the NICU. You know, in case they decided to hit the streets to shoot drugs and have sex with prostitutes. Fast forward to their 18-month wellness visit, they were generally healthy, typically developed children for their corrected age with no issues with hearing or vision. They also received all the ACIP recommended vaccines up to that point, although at the time of the visit they were behind on DTaP for 3 months until they both received them on the fateful day of April 23rd, 2025. After the visit and vaccines, they were okay. They took a nap. When we got home, they seemed tired. But for the rest of the evening, it was business as usual. We ate dinner, they played with us and their dad, and it was okay that day. Mom then described them the next day. That's the day that they woke up, and when they walked out of the room because they were walking, Tyson walked just about to the beginning of my right into the entrance of the living room and just laid down and wouldn't get up. Dallas, the best she could, ran to me because I was sitting on the living room floor getting ready to change their diapers. And Dallas ran to me and she lay on me and she felt heavy and she didn't want to leave me, but she seemed tired. I changed her diaper and I noticed that the typical toddler potbelly was gone. She was skinny. She looked tired. She was almost falling asleep while I was changing her. And when I had moved her out of the way so I could then change her brother, she just lay on the carpet in the living room and wouldn't move or get up. And her eyes kept rolling back like she was trying to go back to sleep. It goes on, there was green diarrhea in their diaper. He also looked skinny. He looked a little worse. His eyes were sunken back with dark circles. They both had a blue tinge to their mouths. And when I would try to pull their lip down to look at it, it was as if their lip was trying to glue itself closed, if that makes sense. She watched them for another minute or so. And she immediately called her mother-in-law because she lives down the street and told her, we need to send these kids to the ER. This is not okay, and got off the phone. So they brought the kids into the emergency room. They were in disbelief that just so quickly, within a matter of 24 hours, the kids went from perfectly happy-go-lucky active babies to looking like they were dying. They were sent home with some Tylenol. They put them on the brat diet. And they went to sleep without incident. And then the mom describes Thursday morning, 8 days after the wellness visit and vaccines. They weren't crying, ready to leave the room, or talking, ready to leave the room, and I had peeped in and wish I had checked on them more, but I peeped into the room and I assumed they were maybe sleeping in because they looked asleep the way they were laying in their room, because they were belly sleepers. Of course, they were old enough at the time to roll over. I went and cleaned up the living room and was getting ready to have them awake. I was waiting for them to wake up, and when I went in there to wake them up is when I found them the way they were. They looked as if they had they had passed in their sleep. They were in their sleeping positions. I think it's called rigor mortis. Their faces were sleeping faces. She called 911, and that's when she discovered that Dallas was also the same way. Can you imagine finding both your kids dead And of course, the police are going to interview, and they're looking for any hints of whether or not you wanted them dead. But the whole issue of this, folks, is being able to take a step back and look at the vaccinations, the vaccination schedule. I think it's by the time you're 18, it's up to 72 or some ridiculous shit thing like that, and way heavy on the younger end. Instead of giving the human being time to develop its own natural immune system, the pharmaceuticals and the medical industry is trying to profit, and they're pushing this shit early, early, early. As early as 1933, there documented the sudden deaths of 2 infants after receiving their whole cell pertussis vaccinations. In 1946, twin boys after diphtheria and pertussis vaccination. So this stuff has been happening early. And the impression is sudden death from severe apnea caused by recent vaccination at 18-month wellness visit for these twins. The underlying pathophysiology was likely due to microstrokes and or neuroinflammation in the respiratory control center in the brainstem, with microstrokes caused by blood sludging clumping from loss of zeta potential due to the inflammatory and or hypercoagulable components of the vaccines. The deaths occurred on the night of day 7 post-vaccine, a time when apnea episodes spike post-vaccination, as per this carefully done study from 1991. There was a study that showed it all. And so the doctor hypothesized that the early spikes are from acute neuroinflammation in the brainstem and microclotting, blood sludging leading to brainstem ischemia. So the study, if you look at infant deaths in the VAERS system from 99 to 2019, of the 2,605 infant deaths, 58% clustered within 3 days post-vaccination, and 78.3% within 7 days post-vaccination. Of the 1,048 SIDS cases, 51% clustered within 3 days post-vaccine, and 75.5% within 7 days. And there's a chart. This is mind-numbing when you think about this. It's mind-numbing. And I think part of the reason why some of the medical people don't want to acknowledge that the science is showing potential harm from the vaccines is because they also then have to come to terms with their moral integrity. Who wants to admit that they've been giving injections to kids? I don't think they're doing that intentionally to harm them. They're doing what they've been taught and trained and have accepted as real science. But we're finding out the science has not been real. It's been hidden. We've got to get this changed in the system. I don't know how to do that. Except when people ask me, hey, do you think we should get vaccines? No. My answer is no. I remember the last flu shot that I ever got. And folks, I'm a vaccinated person. I did not participate in the whole COVID bullshit vaccines, but I'm a retired military guy, as you can imagine. I've been vaccinated for everything around the world. My parents vaccinated me when I was a child, and I used to be, well, do your own study and research, which you should still do before getting the vaccine. But now my answer is always no, don't get it. In 2007, that was my last vaccination. It was a flu shot. And I'm telling you, I had the flu worse than I have ever had the flu after that flu shot. And in this doctor's report here, he's got another more disturbing. She died less than 12 hours after her 1 year wellness baby visit. Folks, you're playing roulette. If you're bringing your kids in for their well baby visits and the vaccination, and you're following the vaccination schedule, I'm sorry, but I'm going to call it what it is. You're playing roulette with the life of that child and the health of that child. They gave this child here, in this case, the doctors or nurses realized that she had missed her 6-month vaccinations. The pediatrician gave her 12 vaccines in one visit to catch up. And let's be clear, the only thing she was catching up on was the schedule and the reimbursements for the same. And this doctor writes, I see no immunological benefit from this practice, only harm, which is insane. Catching up on 12. They performed CPR for 40 minutes and was pronounced dead around 4 a.m., less than 12 hours after receiving 12 vaccines. That's negligence right there. So some of this is mind-numbing. I'm noticing that we're out of time. I appreciate you hanging on. Let me give you another article here in the chat. This one talks about why do vaccines cause the illness? Okay, as I mentioned, I got the flu after my flu shot. Oh, add to scene, remove from scene. There we go. And so it's a crazy scenario out there, folks, and it's finally coming to light. Finally coming to light. Okay, still do your research, but I've seen. Oh, I wanted to share this book too. Here's another title. You can go back and get the recording, pause it, because people are asking, what should I do then? Well, there's books out there on how to raise a child unvaccinated. And there's another website out there if you want to learn more about this. Let me post this. Let me just share this real briefly. Add to scene here. Make informed vaccination decisions for yourself. The National Vaccine Information Center. What I like about this is it goes into, it has the laws all posted by state. Okay. And you can scroll down and click on your state to see where the exemptions exist. All right. There's only a couple places that have no exemption except for a medical exemption. And go figure, try to get your medical doctor in those states to give you that exemption. But if I click on Minnesota, for example, that's where I'm from, you can dive in and see what you have to do to get the exemptions. And yes, you can get exemptions for schools, for your kids. Don't let the school tell you otherwise. That's fear mongering. That's ignorance. But you can go figure out what the laws are and how to get your exemptions submitted. So, a valuable site there. There's information out there if you are willing to suspend your belief system and take a step back and look and read and research. If I had kids today, I would not vaccinate. If I could have a redo with my own children, knowing what I know today, I would not vaccinate. I would let the natural immune system develop. And as a parent, I would consider working on my own health in the meantime to get that back into balance. Okay. Now, since we're already over, I'm going to show another screen. Here we go. Now, last weekend I had an opportunity. I was down in Chicago teaching level 1 quantum nutrition testing. I love teaching the quantum nutrition testing with people, showing them how it works and explaining that. Here's my my shameless slide that talks about, see if I can get this window to close here. It talks about my book. You can scan the QR code there. You can also go to my website, evensonholistic.com, and under the resources tab is a link to go purchase my book, please. Thank you. And if you've actually bought it on Amazon and read it, consider writing a review. That helps. There's one review out there right now. A person gave me a 1 star because she thought the book was going to teach her quantum nutrition testing. And it's very clear on the back that it doesn't do that. In the description, it does not teach quantum nutrition testing, but it tells you how quantum nutrition testing works with holistic health. It tells you how a practitioner can use that to get to the root cause of what's going on in your health. The other one here, if you're thinking about working with a health coach like myself, a holistic doc like myself, you can scan the QR code there, or you can go to my website, and right in the middle of the page, begin your journey, click a schedule, use the code HealthTruth, and you'll get $200 off. It brings the price down to $150. Get scheduled. I'm ready. I have openings next week. Jump on. Okay. And then if you're looking for some personal growth, Wake Up Warrior Challenge is a good program to consider. It really got me out of my head and back into my heart when I went through that. And then next month, I'm speaking at the Quantum Leap 2025 conference down in Orlando, Florida. We're going to be talking about true healthcare. Some great keynote speakers, and there's a whole list of other speakers on the bottom here. If you want to know more about holistic health and health practices, I blurred out the codes on there. Use my scan my code right here, okay? And the prices will still come through. This tells you how to get down when you scan. It brings you to my affiliate page, and you can scan down to sign up for Quantum Leap and join me. Come down and if you can swing it. I know the VIP gold tickets, they're selling out. They're running low if they haven't sold out already. But you can still get in to go. It's going to be a great event. I think I enjoyed the last year's. And it's possible that this year might be the last year that this event is held. But it's really good. So, all right. Let me check one last item. Yes, please share the books. All right. Right. Here is the link, Marie, for the Unvaccinated Child book. And then my other favorite one, and it looks like you can get this on Kindle too. Where is the share link? Paperback. There it is. And this is for Dissolving Illusions. Okay. Make sure I didn't miss any other comments or questions out there. Great. Hey, if you hung on this long, I really appreciate it. We talked a lot about a lot of stuff. Now it's going to be fun to see if I get booted off of any of these platforms because they go against the narrative. You're welcome, Maria. Appreciate it. And with that, I am going to sign off. And I think I'm going to head over to a local FICA and get a cup of coffee and get the rest of my weekend going. I love you guys. Thank you. Thanks for hanging. If you know somebody that can be helped by, they're dealing with some long-term health challenges, send them my way. Let's talk. At least get their information and we'll find out if this program is the right fit for you. So, all right. Thank you. Talk to you later. Love you guys.